Here's every fake investigation and fake red line that Biden's declared while claiming he doesn't tolerate Israel killing civilians. A month ago, Joe Biden said in an interview that an Israeli invasion of Rafah would be a red line for him and that we, quote, can't have another 30,000 more Palestinians dead. He said that if Israel invaded, the U.S. may stop sending weapons to Israel, which would make their invasion impossible.
Would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line?
It is a red line.
But just last week, Israel committed a massacre in a refugee camp in Rafah and then invaded. What Israel was originally trying to frame as a pinpoint operation has quickly become a large-scale military operation. Airstrikes have become more frequent, tanks have entered the city, and now the number of IDF brigades operating in Rafah has gone from 2 to 6. But the Biden administration not only denied that Israel's invasion crosses their red line, it was also discovered that the Biden administration has been continuing to send weapons to Israel despite earlier claims that they had halted a weapons shipment. This is far from the only time the Biden administration has said they would investigate Israel or hold them accountable, only to do none of that. So here's the full list. The Rafah tent massacre. On May 26, the Israeli Air Force bombed Tel al-Sultan refugee camp in Rafah, killing 50 people and injuring 200 after the airstrike started a fire in the camp. Israel deliberately targeted the camp, which we know because by Israel's own admission, they said they were targeting Hamas fighters in the camp, a claim which they provided no evidence for. They also admitted fault, calling the attack a tragic mistake. But despite all this, the U.S. said it didn't cross the red line because it wasn't, quote, a major ground operation.
So how does this not violate the red line that the president laid out?
As I said, we don't want to see a major ground operation. We haven't seen that at this point.
How many more charred corpses does he have to see before the president considers a change in policy?
We don't want to see a single more innocent life taken, and I kind of take a little offense at the question.
Mass graves. Palestinians have repeatedly discovered mass graves throughout the war. Most recently, nearly 400 bodies were discovered outside of the Al-Nasser medical complex after Israeli forces withdrew from the area. UN human rights officials confirmed that some of the bodies had their hands tied, indicating that they were buried after being executed. Despite initial calls for an investigation, the U.S. refused to endorse an independent investigation and instead decided to ask Israel to invest its own crime, stonewalling any legitimate effort to get to the bottom of the situation. The World Central Kitchen Massacre. On April 1st, Israeli drones bombed 3 cars belonging to a charity organization known as the World Central Kitchen. They killed 7 aid workers of various nationalities, hitting 3 separate vehicles in a motorcade over the course of 30 minutes. The charity workers were even coordinating their position with the Israeli military before it happened. Israel initially refused to say whether it was responsible, but then later admitted to the attack after it became obvious. Joe Biden said he was outraged and heartbroken by the attack, which included the death of an American citizen, but didn't do anything to punish Israel for it. The Flower Massacre. On February 29th, Israeli troops opened fire on Palestinians as they waited to receive flour from humanitarian aid trucks, killing 118 people and injuring over 700. Israel's excuse was that it had mostly fired warning shots and only shot a few people that posed a threat and that the rest had died in an impending stampede. But UN officials visiting the hospital where the injured were being treated reported that large numbers of the injured had gunshot wounds. A CNN investigation involving 22 eyewitnesses also found that Israel's timeline of events didn't add up. Despite the overwhelming evidence that Israel was lying and vocal condemnation from within the Biden administration over the attack, the administration not only refused to punish Israel at all, it was also the sole country in the UN Security Council to veto a resolution condemning Israel for the attack. The murder of Hind Rajab. On January 29th, an Israeli tank opened fire in a civilian vehicle carrying 6-year-old Hind Rajab and 6 of her family members. The initial tank shell killed every member of Hind's family besides her cousin, who was subsequently killed by machine gun fire. Hind pleaded with aid workers over the phone to be rescued before she was also murdered. A State Department spokesperson stated, "Everyone in the United States government felt quite deeply about the killings." The State Department stated that they asked Israel to investigate the killings, but Israel, of course, lied. They said their forces were nowhere near where Hind was killed, but two separate investigations of satellite imagery contradicted these claims, as well as the discovery of fragments of a US-made tank shell, the exact type used by Israel. The US, however, has still not punished Israel for the killings. The demolition of Israel University. On January 17th, Israel detonated hundreds of mines inside of Israel University, destroying it completely. When questioned by reporters, State Department officials said that they had raised the issue with the Israeli government. There was, however, no follow-up, and the issue went unpunished. Months later, the IDF quietly admitted to it, censuring a single officer for the unauthorized demolition of the university. There has been no shortage of callous and reprehensible war crimes committed by Israel throughout this genocide. If the Biden administration had any interest in holding Israel accountable, it could have done this months ago. But they don't care. They think we're stupid. They think that if they call for an investigation or issue a statement, we'll forget in time for Israel's next war crime. This is why activists have now called for a national mobilization on the White House on June 8th, calling on people to wear red and surround the White House to call out Joe Biden for all of his fake red lines on Israel's crimes. Biden isn't fooling anyone. When it comes to genocide and war crimes, Biden never gave Israel a red line. All he ever gave them was a green light.